This episode we are sponsored by Small Press Online. Do you want to tell them all about it, love?
Do you want me to read that bit there?
Go on.
Do you want me to read it all? Buy Small Press Online is the brand new comics marketplace. Looking for a place to purchase the latest in what Small Press has to offer? Or are you a creator looking to build an online store? Then this site is just right for you. Head over to buysmallpress.com/lakes and start exploring today.
So it's a brand new website. Aaron behind Fair Spark Books, Little Heroes Comics, has created this website. Essentially, it's Etsy, but focused on
Small Press
comic creators. Much cheaper. Versus hardly any money has to go.
Yeah.
To the website, so that as a creator, you're keeping the majority of the pennies.
Yeah, which is good.
Yeah, very easy to use and very easy to navigate.
Yeah.
So if you're interested in signing up as a creator, get on there. But if you're just interested in finding some comics,
because it can be hard to find Small Press comics in one place.
And at the minute, we can't go out and do a comic show.
No, so you're not going to find. I mean, all these people. You know, you'd find at a Comic-Con and you'd be able to browse. It's like having a Comic-Con just to look at on your computer. You can go around and have a look.
Without the sweaty people
without
mingling
armpits,
next to you.
because I'm only ever armpit height. There's a lot of armpits involved. And you don't get the Comic-Con lurgy.
If you go on there before the end of January as well, there's a chance to win a Kindle Fire. So, also... your subscription of Comic House, just to add to that.
Lovely.
So pop on there. Every purchase gives you 100 entries, or there's also ways to get entries without purchasing as well. So jump on the website, buysmallpress.com, and have a look.
Yeah, definitely. Put away your umbrellas, get out your mint cakes, hike to your nearest chair. Pop in your headphones and get ready for the next episode of the Lakes International Comic Art Festival podcasts with your hosts, live from the Lakes, the practically perfect Nicole Bates, and don't get him angry, Ian Loxham.
Hello and welcome to the Lakes International Comic Art Festival podcast, episode 87.
87.
My name is Ian.
And I'm Nikki.
And it's 2021.
We are in 2020. Do you know, 2021 has looked at 2020 and gone, hold my beer. I could do this.
I can suck harder than 2020. Yeah, for the UK, it's lockdown 3.
Lockdown 3.
Yay! Electric Boogaloo.
It doesn't work. Lockdown 2 Electric Boogaloo works. Lockdown 3. Lockdown 3.
Lockdown. It's Lockdown.
Lockdown.
So we started sort of this year, you know, like we're going to get back in the podcast game. Yeah, because everything's going to be good. Yeah, vaccines. Yeah.
Vaccines. We're never going to see a vaccine.
Vaccines. And then lockdown.
Because...
Shut the borders.
Is that you shutting the borders?
Yeah, that's the doors coming down.
Is that the shutters?
It's everything, isn't it? So yeah.
Yeah. So life hasn't changed for me throughout the entire thing, apart from getting up early. I'm still working.
She still does nothing. It's basically what she's saying.
I go in, I cycle into work for 4 o'clock in the morning, and I work in a supermarket.
And then one of those days I give you a lift, even though I'm off.
Saturday, you give me a lift because it's dangerous. I fell over this morning.
So you're not going to need a lift in the spring?
Yeah, possibly on
Possibly,
because it's useful.
Whatever.
When you pick me up, you can get shopping in. It's
okay. Anyway, so we're back now on schedule. The plan
on schedule. We're a day late.
I'm feeling better. That's true. Yeah, but Saturday, Saturday. You know. Yeah. So yeah, we're back in. The whole team's ready to rock.
Yes.
And we're gonna do this for jizzle.
For jizzle.
For jazzle. For juzzle. Right, this episode, let's get serious. We have the lovely Sarah McIntyre on.
We do.
Who was lovely to chat to.
She was so nice.
Lovely. I'm using the term
fabulous.
Lovely a lot, but lovely lady.
Fabulous. I think is the word we need
Fabulous. So listen to her coming up very shortly. We've got Tom on reviewing Neurotic Fiction by Joe Stone. Mm-hmm. And Mike and Peter together again.
No.
For the penultimate episode of the Chandler World Cup.
It's not going to end 2021. It's
penultimate.
It's just like the heart. Then they're going to do like, I don't know, some kind of weird extra playoff thing. I could feel
You don't know
it.
football. What are you talking about? You're
I don't.
You're acting there like you have a clue what you're talking about.
I don't have a clue, but then it's Mike and Pete together.
Yes. Yes. So first of all, I think I owe an apology to the whole podcast crew and the Lakes International Comic Art Festival for my performance on the Awesome Comics end of year quiz.
Hang head.
I'm not going to say who won or lost.
Nope. Though I'm telling you to hang your head.
But what I will say,
it's
it
for your
was
performance, really.
the Awesome Comics podcast versus Pete.
Pete's amazing.
I
reckon he was there on Google.
Well, I think Pete and Mike or Pete and Tom are on there, then, you know, smash.
Yeah.
But Awesome Boys would be no way. You'd be out of here. Go on, get out of here.
But they didn't have that, did they? You didn't have that. There was Pete and
Well,
you.
no, because I was there to balance and allow them to...
Right, there was you. I mean, I was fine. I was in score corner.
Right, in my defence, there's a slight bit of defence.
There's a defence here for your performance. Go on.
Well, okay, my knowledge is rubbish, first of all. But also, I didn't read Marvel growing up. I read DC. Essentially, just Batman was basically what it was.
Wow.
So,
look at this
admittedly,
sidestep to your performance. Yeah.
the one odd question I may have answered right, I got wrong.
Yes, you did.
Well, no, actually, no. I knew it wasn't the obvious answer. I can't remember what it was.
North and South one?
No, I can't remember. It's about a comic being... that you assume the character was started in 2000 AD.
Right,
and I did say it wasn't 2000 AD. So I knew the obvious answer wasn't the answer. I just didn't know the actual answer.
That is not... That's not the same, is it?
Anyway.
As to knowing the answer and getting
if you
it
want
right
to have a giggle, have a listen to the end of year quiz. And yeah.
I was definitely on the wine by that point, wasn't I?
We were on wine.
Yeah, that's fine then.
Everyone was drinking.
Yeah, we still are.
If you're hearing a rattling...
The radiator's just come on.
That's next door's car rumbling away.
Oh, it's rattling around.
It's like we're in an earthquake.
A very, very tiny earthquake.
Anyway, right. So we also got a little bit of festival news, but we'll do that at the end. Yes, actual festival news.
Sorry, I was pressing the radiator again.
Ridiculous. Right, so should we do some... Well, I've got a review and also a comic to talk about, which we theoretically shouldn't review because it is one of our team members.
Yes.
But we will promote and talk because that's what we should be doing.
Yes.
So let's mention about that first. So that Comic Smell comic by... Well, it's a Comic Smell team. Obviously, Tom is up there.
He is indeed.
The boy. The man.
Our little lad has grown up and he's flown away. he's what's it?
I don't have a clue what you're on about. Anyway.
He's stretched his wings.
Facts. So, in this comic, we have got, obviously, Tom himself, Mike Sadat, Dave Robertson. We've also got John Tucker. I'm trying to read the straight line there that it's not in. Nando and obviously the wonderful John Tucker as well, jumping on board.
I've
even though
said
it's not.
That once.
Have I said John Tucker? Okay.
Yeah. Don't worry about it though.
It's also John Tucker.
It's John Tucker in it.
So this is an anthology comic, a collection of stories written by random members, drawn by a couple of the members.
Yep.
Because I don't think Tom draws.
So no, he writes.
He's right. And it is just a selection of some bizarre tales.
Yes, definitely some bizarre
tales. Some bit more straightforward. Just a very...
I said it was a chocolate box.
Chocolate box.
Yes, so it's
you
one of those
never know what you go.
It is though, isn't it? It's a chocolate box of styles and stories and everything really. And I thoroughly enjoyed it because why not have a little? I mean, some of them made us chat afterwards because they're quite
mind-bending,
yeah, interpretive. We could interpret different ways on them. So yes, I found something very interesting like that. I think the standout one for me was John Tucker's. But yeah, it was all really good, and there was some great art going on. I
think it shows as well that you don't need your fancy computers.
No, of course you don't.
To make a comic, a pencil and a piece of paper.
Yeah, exactly.
Is enough to create that story and do what you want with it.
But isn't that how it should be? I see.
Well, it should be all. It should be whatever.
But what I mean is,
it's whatever style you can do.
But just grab a piece of paper and go, I'm going to do a comic, And I think that heralds this.
I think there's sometimes too much pressure to get it exact and perfect with using the computer and the technology and utilising, you know.
But
I mean, some creators they're perfect on computer. That's their beast.
Yeah. So, but what I'm saying is you don't need all that fancy stuff, and that's what you're saying. And there's something about a hand drawn that I just get the feeling of the soul.
Because that's how Nikki does it. Because she can't use a computer.
It's true. Unless someone wants to send me one of those great big ones, but I'd still probably use my finger if I was doing that. It'd be awful. So yes, I like to use paper and pen because it's paint. Because it's just
because it's a twee.
Because it's a twee. Because it's easy, but you know, whatever floats your boat. But it does mean that you can just pick up a pencil. If you want to start making comics, you don't need anything more than a pencil and some paper. No,
that is very true. And some colouring crayons as well, if you fancy it.
Only if you fancy it.
If you fancy it.
But you don't have to. You can do it with a ballpoint pen. You know, it doesn't matter how you create it. Just create.
Whilst at work. Do it whilst at work in the corner out of the way. No one will see you doing it.
You just see me doing it while I'm pushing my toes out, picking people shopping. I'm just sketching.
So as we talk, this isn't out yet, but it is out within the next few weeks. We'll put links to where it will be available from on the podcast episode, and it will be on Comixology and other places as well.
Yes.
So check that out, that Comic Smell comic. The other one I'm going to talk about is Gamayun Tales 2, Alexander Utkin from Nobrow Press. So we reviewed the first one of this. Oh. Well, the first anthology, because these have been out for quite a while, I believe. But Nobrow have put them together in a trilogy of stories, essentially, each time. And again...
Oh, I love them.
Absolutely. I mean, the artwork, we don't need to discuss that. That was gorgeous last time. Beautiful. It's exactly the same. It's gorgeous. Again, I'm just going to... I can't remember the tales names, so I'm going to just open this up and remind myself 1 second. So we have got the Vasilla and the Doll, the Golden Apples Part 1, and the Golden Apples Part 2.
And 5 questions for Alexander.
Yes. Well, I think that is just literally 5 questions for the creator.
That's fine.
It's not a story, darling.
It's because I haven't got to the end. I'm only halfway through. Because someone's been monopolising it and I didn't know where it had been. And then you went and told me where it was. It was under a stack of books up beside your bed and I hadn't looked there.
Okay, anyway, let me give the brief bump
you
to the back.
go and do that while I
In the Doll, a young adventurer seeks a mysterious Baba Yaga, to save those she loves Baby Yaga, with the help of a magical doll. But the witch doesn't give away magic for free. In the Golden Apples, 3 royal brothers set off a quest to save their father and claim the crown. Who will prevail? And which one is worthy of the mystical Golden Apples? I love, and the same with the first one, how all the stories intertwine.
Yes. So there'll be like a character in one that will then follow in the next one.
And the stories in this that will be on the next series as well. That sort of, oh, they found that. Well, what's going to go on there? They don't tell you everything.
No.
And being based on old folklore, Russian folklore, there's always something a bit evil, a bit twisted, a bit dark.
Yes, but that is folklore.
It's interesting.
It's not Disney-fied. This is old folklore stories are dark and twisted and not simple, and that appeals to me because I'm dark and twisted. But yeah, it is beautiful. I do really love them.
I said I'm going to talk about the art, but I'm going to talk about the art. The colours are just perfect within the whole book. I feel it just whether they're in a room, whether they're outside, it just gives that atmospheric colour, and everything about it is just ideal. And I absolutely adore reading it.
Yeah.
Every frame feels like it's required. If that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah. No, it really does, and it brings the story alive. In some ways, you can read a comic and sometimes I find you can read a comic and ignore the pictures and just get... This is terrible, isn't it? And just get through the story. Whereas this one, the pictures tell the story as much as the words. And it's rare to find a comic that actually engages you both on the words and pictures. Maybe it's just me on that one. But...
Words and pictures. Wasn't that like a kids' programme you watched?
When you were ill.
From BBC. Words and pictures.
Words and pictures.
No, so yeah, grab the first one, grab this one. Very enjoyable pieces of work.
Yeah, oh, definitely.
Yeah. WandaVision.
Oh, hello. That wasn't a segue into anything.
We watched that. That's just released as of we speak this weekend.
Yes, we watched the first episode.
On Disney Plus. What's going on?
Would you want me to actually say what's going on?
Well, we don't actually know.
Okay.
We can guess by what.
I don't want to say anything.
Well,
I'm
no,
not going to
you can
say
say
anything. No, I think it's all in her mind because Vision can't walk through. Well, he walks through things and she doesn't. So she feels like she's the only thing that is actually solid in whatever it is she's experiencing.
But it's whether this is in her mind.
Oh, it's being programmed into her.
Oh, obviously, it obviously is to do with her mind, I'm guessing.
Well, going by the... Oh, no,
But-
we're giving spoilers.
No, we're not.
This
is my opinion. This is my opinion.
Okay.
I'm not spoilers because there's nothing out there.
No, okay.
Sorry, okay, let's... If you've... I'm going to put a spoiler thing in earlier on for this.
Yes.
Okay. Well, to be fair, what we're going to talk about now is almost in the trailer anyway.
Okay.
So they're both in this sitcom.
Like a 1950s
But something's
American
not right.
sitcom.
And this is basically what's in the trailer, to be honest.
Well, there's things, isn't they can't remember how they met, where they got married. They can't remember anything about themselves apart from they're in this place. Yeah. He's going to a job where she doesn't know why he's going. And the thing that got me was the toaster with the red light, because everything's black and white. But it had a toaster, but it was beeping like it was a life support machine, and it was speeding up like it was almost like she was coming out of something.
So
like
we know, I think, before anyone watches this, there's something going on. It's not.
It's
weird.
obviously something going on.
But
and
it's
red
whether,
is very much a
and it's whether
colour in it.
Is this her own doing? Is she protecting herself from something? Is somebody holding her? As somebody captured her? Somebody controlling her? Because you see some a bit later in the episode, but it doesn't explain anything really either.
No, nothing's been explained. But then you kind of have an inkling if it is following the House of M. Yeah. In which case,
we won't go into that. But if people know the story, then they'll have an idea what that means. It's interesting.
It's intriguing. I was going to say nothing much happened apart from it.
That's why I can't spoil it.
It's slightly off kilter,
happen.
Isn't it?
Yeah, nothing does happen in the first episode.
There's enough kind of weirdness going on that it is slightly off kilter.
Mm-hmm. It's odd, but intriguing, like you say, and clever.
Very clever.
That it's not your usual superhero jaunt. I believe, from what I've read of the Disney themselves talking about it, there's more action as it goes along. But what happens to get to that point? Yeah, that's the thing. That's the point. What's going to go on? It's odd.
It's intriguing, like you say.
It's odd. It's like Disney Plus. I was going to cancel it, and it's like, oh.
Yeah, you got to keep it now.
Got to keep it now.
Oh, they
damn
put it
you.
up as well.
Yeah. But they're doing well. Mandalorian was enjoyable. This is going to be. It looks like it's going to be enjoyable. I imagine everything they're going to do is probably going to be enjoyable, and it's really annoying.
Yes, it's annoying.
But it seems to have just landed at the right time when you've got things like Wonder Woman that's come out. You don't want to go to the cinema. You don't want to pay £15 to watch it.
I was going to say 50 quid just to rent it.
To rent it, but then you got stuff like this, and you feel you're getting a lot more money's worth. Yeah, simple as. Yeah, and you're getting more story, which is holding you in for 8 to 10 hours rather than your 2-hour film. Yeah, it's just brilliant. I'm enjoying it.
Thank you very much.
Okay, that's right. Why are you saying thank you? You didn't create any of it.
Maybe I did.
Before we bring on Sarah, I got you a really good Christmas present this year, didn't I?
Did you?
Related to anime, yes.
Oh, I don't remember. Yes, you did. You got me the Cowboy Bebop album.
How good is it?
It's amazing. I love it with a passion. I mean, it's a beautiful record on vinyl, obviously. Yes. It's a beautiful record set to begin with its psychedelic-y purple and a reddy yellow one. If anyone loves the anime, then go and grab the vinyl. Because, I mean, who doesn't want to have, even just the opening is just the most perfect opening to any anime. And you want some jazz in your life? You want some blues? Hello. Blues. Get it and play it and enjoy it.
Yeah, I did good.
You did good.
Thank you very much. Right, we're going to bring on Sarah McIntyre and then the lads take it away, and we're going to come back at the end just to talk a little bit about the Lakes International Comic Art Festival 2021.
Buy Small Press Online is the brand new comics marketplace. Looking for a place to purchase the latest of what Small Press has to offer? Are you a creator looking to build an online store? Then this site is just right for you. Head over to buysmallpress.com/lakes and start exploring today. It's his comics that smell, not him. Prepare for all the small press goodness that he can squeeze into 5 minutes. Your host, Tom Scratch and Sniff Stewart.
Hello and welcome to Small Press, the Small Press Reviews section of the Comic Art Festival podcast with me, Tom Stewart. How are you all doing? Happy New Year. I have a tremendous comic to speak about today. I was sent this a couple of months ago, very kindly. It is a collection of 3 short comics, each with a unique colour and topic. It is Neurotic Fiction, issue 1 by Joe Stone. I spoke about Joe's previous work, Stutter, on here before. He does do a multitude of stuff around the sort of comics community. He's got workshops that he runs, Work in Progress, WIP. He's also, I know he does the podcast for the Work in Progress podcast, but I'm a big fan of Joe's work. I really like his style. He's got a really solid illustration style, and I've spoken about that before. And Neurotic Fiction just basically is a continuation of that. It's a very solid, confident style to it. It's very lovely. I really like the cover to this as well. I've got it digitally. I very much plan on getting it physically because I would love to see this bright colour in my hand physically. It's a very, very bright pink, but there is other colours that go throughout it as well. There's a van or a road, a UPX delivery service van that's on it. And it kind of centres around this van. The 3 stories involve it somehow either going past in the story or delivering something. Each story is very unique. I won't give anything away about them. One is about a love machine, which is a female robot of some sort, and this man's interaction with this robot. Also, the next story is the delivery driver of the UPX vans and his memories of a certain relationship. And the last story is about 2 friends having a lunch of some sort and the conversation that comes up over that about people and how people perceive relationships, etc. Joe does a lot of stuff within this comic. I don't know what I was expecting from it because it's a very vague cover and he hadn't really disclosed a lot about it. There's an obvious sort of relationship angle in it. Very much plays with different kinds of relationships throughout it, whether it be friendships or going through breakups or loneliness or anything like that. I'm hoping the fact that it is in issue 1, I'm hoping that there will be some sort of continuation, if not within this world that he has built up in here, maybe even following along from the same stories, because I would love to see more from these characters that are based in this world. Like I say, he has a really strong colour palette that goes throughout it as well, that very much the colour plays to the strength of the story as well. One bit in particular plays with a lot of blank space and just like a tiny little image in the corner and then just massive blank spaces. And I just think when people do stuff like that, it's like super, super bold. You've got to have a good idea that goes along with it, because you can't just have a big massive space and not have something that's playing to it. I've seen people who have done that before and just put loads of speech bubbles in blank spaces and it just doesn't work. Whereas this kind of builds to something and it goes somewhere and it kind of shows you almost like a raw emotion within it. He plays around with panel structure and he actually messes with the panels themselves. They're not necessarily stuck to being in the place that they should be. Characters kind of bound out of panels. There's a bit of fourth wall breaking. He's got I think Joe's got a firm grasp on how a comic should be played with. I would definitely recommend it 100%. Neurotic Fiction by Joe Stone. My only gripe, I would say, and it's very slight, is that some of the stories, because they're so short, I kind of felt like I needed or wanted more out of them. but I definitely felt like there was more that could have been done in the stories. Maybe just extend it, even if he was to do an issue 2, if he was to do the same structure of 3 stories. Maybe even just lengthened them, gave them a wee bit more room to breathe. But like I say, it's just a little niggle. Otherwise, it still plays out really well, and it's still brilliant. I really, really loved it. Really loved it. So I'm looking forward to having this one in my hands. Head on over to joe-stone.co.uk/shop to get your copy, and follow Joe at Joe_Stone on Twitter. Also, remember to check out his work in progress collective, whip_comics, at whip_comics. Really great stuff. Check it out. Keep an eye out on Instagram and Twitter at the minute. I've seen people posting different sorts of projects and stuff that they're getting launched at the minute. There's loads of comics available online. There's actually far too many for me to list at the minute in the short time that I've got here. But get on over, literally, there's so many people putting out comics. There's so many that maybe didn't manage to get them out last year that are now getting them out just now. In fact, That Comic Smell, myself, Nando, David and Mike from That Comic Smell podcast are launching our first anthology, That Comic Smell comic. It will be available really, really soon. Check it out. Make sure and keep an eye at fredeggcomics.bigcartel.com, and you'll be able to get it there for £4 physically, and it will also be available digitally on Comixology and Comic House. Keep an eye out on our Twitter at ThatComicSmell for more details of when it's going to be launching and when it's going to come up and everything. There's a wee video there of the proof so you can see it, but I'm really looking forward to us getting it out there and seeing what you folks think, but keep an eye. And that is all from me this time. I will see you later for more small press goodness. Thanks very much, folks. Read loads more comics. To get in touch, please go to Twitter and Instagram at ThatComicSmell. Thanks for listening.
With us on our first interview of 2021, artist and illustrator Sarah McIntyre. Thank you for coming on, Sarah.
Hi, it's great to be here.
First of all, how's lockdown for you? How are you staying sane?
I think I'm really lucky because I have a studio, so I get to go 2 places, and it's just walking distance from my house. So I don't have to sort of work 5 feet away from where I slept.
That's true.
Which I used to do.
A lot of creators have found that, and it's not changed much for a lot of them. But how have you found it overall? Has it affected you at all, do you think, or has it just been business as usual?
Yeah. Well, I was doing so many events, almost to the point of breaking, where I was, trying to pump out books, and every week I'd have a certain number of events and running around and trying to answer all the emails related to those things, and keeping the costumes fresh, and it's just so much to think about. And it's sort of actually been kind of not nice because I miss certain things about it. I miss meeting the kids and I miss talking with people, but kind of nice to just sort of calm down a bit and actually do some work.
It sounds like hard work doing the weekend stuff, not the actual writing by the sounds of it. So when you were growing up, did you read comics and books? What were you into?
I did. I loved them. When I grew up in Seattle, we had the Seattle Times newspaper, and that had a whole big funny section. On Sunday, it was 8 pages, I think, of full color comics, and we had Calvin and Hobbes and Peanuts and all the greats, and it was just amazing. I loved that, and our whole family would fight over the section who got to live first, including my dad. And then my mom would buy anthologies of For Better For Worse, Calvin and Hobbes again, Far Side, and I used to read those like 100 times each. And then I'd copy out Archie comics. My mom occasionally would buy me Archie comics at the supermarket, but then kids at school would have them, and that was the ultimate goal, was to try to borrow somebody's Archie comic.
You're the same with Garfield, aren't you?
Yes.
You were a big Garfield reader.
Very much so.
I never have Garfield because it was always checked out at the library, and there was like a waiting line of like 40 people to get each Garfield book.
Oh.
That's brilliant. So did that affect the sort of art you did as a kid? Because I know you were into drawing when you were young, weren't you?
Yeah, I mean, I would actually just copy things like Archie. I used to make a magazine for the neighbor, and I would, I wasn't even that creative. I would just literally copy comics out of Archie. But I've come to realize that's actually a really good practice, because you get to understand how they're made and sort of how to make the shapes and things. So I'm proud of that now.
But did anyone pay you for it? It's like the internet of the early days, isn't it?
Actually, I did. I remember, not comics, but I used to make pictures with my friend Brittany, and we'd get her red wagon and go around her streets and knock on people's doors and charge 10 cents a picture. And yeah, people would buy it out of pity. Because, two cute little girls going, will you buy my pictures?
Now, obviously, when you're doing interviews, you look into people and you look at what they've been up to. And I was quite surprised to see that you didn't sort of jump into naturally a career of creating and so forth. You'll just talk about where you went to university and
yeah, I wasn't quite sure. I thought I might want to be a writer of some sort, like a journalist. And I went to Bryn Mawr College because I had a good Russian program. Well, actually, no, I went because they had a good archaeology program. And then I got into the Russian degree and ended up doing that because I liked Russian lit. Mm-hmm. And then I went to Moscow for 2 years on the course, and then another year. And I started working at the Moscow Times newspaper and teaching art classes as well. And that was really good preparation for a lot of things, but I thought I wanted to be a newspaper person. And when I actually worked at the paper, I really liked being a copy editor, but I saw the pressure that the journalists were under. Mm-hmm. And I thought, I don't want any part of that. They never got to sleep. Like, every single connection had to be something for a story, and they had to be working 24 hours a day, or somebody else was. Mm-hmm. And it was quite frightening, actually. Mm.
How was it working in Moscow, though, as well, in Russia?
Oh, it was wonderful. It was between 96 and 98, and it was really Wild West. Like, nobody knew the rules, and everything was changing constantly, and it was just so exciting. And you could run around pretty safe, like at 2 a.m. with your friends, and be fine, and use good public transport. Amazing art museums, and that's kind of, I think, where I really fell in love with narrative folklore kind of art, because they have like the Trechikov Museum and the Vasnetsov House Museum, which was just down the road from where I lived. It's just amazing, like, folklore art.
Do you feel then that art sort of gave you ideas for your creations down the line? Have you sort of looked back at that as you've created books?
Yeah, I mean, I think the folklore art actually, it probably intimidated me because it was so good. I didn't think I could do that. But there was the kind of more like the printed art, where it's sort of the sort of old communist revolutionary stuff, which, I mean, I don't necessarily like what it was portraying, but just the way they did it was very flat. They only had like 1 or 2 colors of paint, all handmade DIY. It looked much more approachable, and I kind of like that limited color palette aesthetic. Also, like Ivan Bilibin, the illustrator, it was much more flat. It was more kind of European Linclair, sort of Tintin, sort of comic book style, instead of this deep, 6 foot tall oil paintings that I could never reproduce myself.
No, couldn't. Can you imagine that?
No.
Nikki struggles to fill a page. Never mind.
It's so mean.
It's true though.
So are you guys illustrators as well, or comics artists?
I ain't. But no, Nikki does. Yeah, she does watercolour works.
I do, yeah.
And done a few comics.
Yes.
Gone on.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Oh, cool. Do you do watercolour in your comics?
Yes, I do, yeah.
Oh, how does that reproduce? Do you find it reproduces really well?
It does okay, doesn't it? Because you take it into scan.
We've got a good scanner.
Yeah.
So that always helps. But it seems to come across well. But I say it's just that as you create a picture, if you're not doing a full page, which you don't.
I like the negative space.
It's quite hard to manipulate watercolour sometimes on a computer.
Oh, yeah.
I like to cause problems for him, really.
I think it's really nice when people sort of use a lot of, handmade elements in comics, because you get such a look with digital work that can be very uniform sometimes. And it's, I don't know, people like Dan Barry and stuff, I look at their work and think, it's so nice that, the water, people ask him, how do you get that watercolor effect? And he's like, watercolor? Yeah.
But then sometimes with watercolors, you can't get the effects like you get with such bright colours in the pages that they do stand out. Is it always digital and computerized work that you do?
Well, no, actually, it's funny because I've been going more and more back to paint because I don't know. It's partly just a mental health thing. Like if I stare at the screen all day, I get really my brain just kind of goes numb.
Yeah.
And I really like painting. And the funny thing is like with my early comics, the color was really dictated by not knowing how Photoshop worked. Mm-hmm. So I was using the bare minimum and sort of treating it like screen printing, really, with colors on each layer. Mm-hmm. And I didn't even know that multiply function that lets like a pencil become, you can put color over a pencil. I didn't know you could do that. So I was working around all these constrictions, just not knowing stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting.
But I kind of gave it a cool look. I kind of like the retro screen printed look it had.
Yes, yeah.
So we've jumped ahead. Let's go back a bit. So how did you then get into illustrating and creating these amazing books?
How was it? I moved to London and because I met my husband in Moscow, mm-hmm. and we moved here. And then I was running an art gallery for 6 years with some friends, and they were very into kind of minimalism and all this sort of sensations artists and things. And I got really kind of bored of concept art and how figurative art was really uncool at the time. And I thought, I just want to draw like people and animals and things and settings. And the art gallery finally came to an end, and I was doing some books with a kind of vanity press that somebody I knew from high school had set up. And those were really good training. It wasn't that fun, but it was good training. And eventually, when that came to an end, I finally realized I could get cheap UK art, go to art college and not have to pay foreign fees anymore. Okay. And I thought, I should go to art college because it's really cheap. It was like £3,000 for 2 years of an MA degree at illustration at Camberwell. Mm-hmm. So I just went and did it. It was great. It was just so nice to dedicate 2 years to really focusing on bettering my illustration work. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that's how I got into it.
So how did that lead to getting publication deals and working with?
That was through comics. That was, I was kind of trying to figure out how to get in. I joined the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, which helped a little, mm-hmm. but it was really comics. And I got in through my friend Ellen Lindner, who's a New York artist who was over here.
Okay.
She said, you should get on LiveJournal because there's all these cool comic artists. And I thought, okay. So I set up a blog on LiveJournal, which really introduced me to a lot of the people like Eleanor Davis and Lucy Nicely and people. Mm-hmm. And they became real inspirations. Raina Telgemeier, that was way back in the day. And so just blogging really helped. And then I eventually met Paul Gravett, who linked me up with David Fickling, who said, can you do a page a week for the DFC, which was a comic he was setting up. And also while you're there, do you want to do a picture book as well with Giles Gray? Okay. So it's kind of my big introduction from Paul Gravett. And that's kind of where everything kicked off.
So just going to your blog, you still do the blog now, don't you?
Yes, I do. And in fact, even on LiveJournal.
I was having a look before to notice when you said LiveJournal, it's like, that's still the same thing. So I've heard you discuss this. Is it right you try and do a post a day or some sort of art almost every day? Yeah.
I think Twitter's kind of taken over for me a bit.
Yeah.
Just because it's so immediate and easy. But I like LiveJournal as a kind of backup almost for myself because I can go back and look over the years and it's much easier to follow what I've done through LiveJournal than it is through Twitter because Twitter is just too much noise.
Yeah.
But I can really kind of look back at my own career and think, what did I do in Christmas in 2007? Oh, okay. It's kind of an external hard drive for my brain.
So one of the things you started doing was doing work with Philip Reeve.
That's right, yeah.
What's the process there? Because again, I've heard you talking, saying that he does the writing, you sometimes help him, you do the illustration, he sometimes help you. But is there a bit more of a deeper process there? I'm sure there is, on how these stories are created from start to finish.
Oh, we call ourselves co-authors because we really create the stories together. He kind of says, what would you like to draw? Okay. And I think, well, like for Pugs of the Frozen North, I thought, how about a really ridiculous race where instead of huskies in this dog race, we have really small dogs like chihuahuas or something. And that would be really funny. And he's like, okay, we could do this and make it more like wacky races. And then he'll go away and write, and then he'll call me when he gets stuck. Or we might talk it over. I go visit him because he lives on Dartmoor. Mm-hmm. And we'll just go on long walks and talk over the story. And he'll write it up. And then recently he's been helping, like the past probably 5 books, he's been helping me with the pencil roughs because he's really fast. Like it'll take me about 2 weeks to do pencil roughs for a book. But if I sit down with him at my desk, we'll get through it in about a day and a half, 2 days. And he's so quick. He used to draw for Horrible Histories. And so he's really good at churning stuff out fast. And so we do the roughs together, and then I finally do the color art, the inking and the color artwork myself. Mm-hmm.
So how does that differ when you're creating your own books?
I think because they're chapter books, they're the longer sort of 200-page books, and they're a mix of ink and digital. Mm-hmm. Whereas the picture books I do, like Grumpycorn, those would be completely all watercolor. Mm-hmm. And that was set up by Scholastic, who said to me they didn't want me to do any digital, because I think it was about 10 years ago, and digital was still pretty new, and a lot of stuff looked really flat. Mm-hmm. And I think they just didn't want me to accidentally go down that road. Mm-hmm. So they said, no, we'll scan it all, just submit the paintings to us. So I still do that. Although, no, actually, that's wrong. For Don't Call Me Grumpycorn, I scan my own watercolor. But I actually prefer that. I prefer painting and seeing it all kind of happen on the page.
Yeah, you seem to enjoy scattering pages across a room.
Yes, well, that has to happen.
Trying to work out which page is which sometimes.
Yeah, I'm not the most organised of pages.
But that's cool. It's nice to see all your work laid out. If you go on the computer and then your computer crashes, it's like this. It's just awful.
So how do you plan a story then? What's your process and come up with ideas? Is it a case of just sitting there, or does it come to you while you're walking? Or
yeah, well, with Philip Reeve, often it's the concept that'll come first, and then with my own books, I'll kind of just make some rough notes, maybe about a character. Mm-hmm. Like for Grumpycorn, I was on an airplane and I was going to Alaska to visit my family, and I didn't know, my editor said, I need to have a story from you when you get back, because I had a contract for 2 books that were unspecified. And I hadn't done anything, and I thought, oh, no, I got to think of something on my vacation. So I was on the plane, and I was like, right, I've got my writing notebook and my nice writing notebook, my pen, and then I realized I'd packed my writing notebook in the luggage. God, it was like a 10-hour flight. And so I got my phone out and I started tapping into the phone, and I thought, I don't know what to write. So I just started literally tapping something in, and I said, once upon a time, there was a girl named Sarah McIntyre who had to write a story, but she had no idea what to write. And then I was like, well, what if I was a unicorn? That would be much better. It'd be funnier. So once upon a time, there was a unicorn who wanted to write a fabulous story, but I had no idea what to write. And I kind of drafted out this story about this ridiculous unicorn who can never actually get the story written. And when I got to Alaska, I met this artist called Valisa Higman, who has this amazing studio out on stilts by the water in the middle of nowhere. And it's so beautiful. It's off the Kenai Peninsula. And it's all wooden. Everything's hand carved and so cool. And she has, and I thought, what if Grumpycorn, or what if the unicorn was trying to write here, which is like a perfect setup, and still couldn't write a story. And she gets visited by all these otters who come and play right on the dock. And, she's always got these amazing animals coming to visit her. And I thought, oh, what if it's, he's still trying to write a story, but there's all these cool animals visiting him, and he just can't get that story written. So it just kept adding like things I was experiencing. And so his cottage in the book looks very much like Valisa's cottage. And she gets visited by a mermaid. And I actually didn't do otters because I thought, no, I'll leave that story for Valisa to do, because she's a children's book person too. But I had a narwhal and a jellyfish, and they're all friends, and they come and visit her or visit Unicorn, and he gets really frustrated.
That's interesting how a real life sort of events almost has turned into a kid's story. It's how do you focus it towards children as well? Because I think that's always a challenge for an adult, I feel. Yeah,
I find it quite easy. I just kind of think what I like, and I think maybe I just like things that are quite funny and ridiculous, and little characters. I like animals doing things, which makes it fun. Because you take something that looks really normal, like a man running for a bus, or a woman, and that's really boring. But if you make it a sheep running for a bus, and the sheep is carrying a tuba, like suddenly it's kind of a joke even before you started writing jokes. Yeah. So it's kind of making things a little bit absurd. A unicorn trying to write. Of course, the hooves don't work with the pencil, so it looks ridiculous having this pencil kind of connected to a hoof. Even things like that are stupid, but they make me laugh.
That's brilliant.
It's making me think already. Yeah. Just the way you're talking is sort of, because my mind doesn't think that way. but you can see your mind is linking pictures and ideas and thoughts to the story. Mm-hmm. It's really clever. And it's probably just your mind jumps that way, but mine certainly doesn't. I'm intrigued.
I think comics have really helped because you can you sort of get those in-between pictures where, something ridiculous will happen. Maybe not even, it gives a bit more room for sort of like film almost kind of elements of the story. Yeah. So I do work comic elements into like Grumpycorn that has some comics panels. And also when I teach kids, like I show them the story and then say, well, how about these two characters? Like there's this book I just did with Philip called Kevin and the Biscuit Bandit. And there's two little characters called Neville and Beyonce who are guinea pigs. And they have a kind of mini adventure within the story. Mm-hmm. And so I say to kids, or now I've been doing the video because it's like lockdown, but I tell say, can you take these two guinea pigs and then in a comic make their adventure continue? So they do another heist or ridiculous caper. And I think that's a really nice way to do it, to introduce kids to comics and story making, because you can kind of go from one thing to the next. You don't have to have just big sort of double page spread scenes like you would in a picture book.
One of the things that certainly jumps out about when you're visiting kids or standing up on stage is your clothes and your hat wear. If people haven't seen Sarah, stunning dresses and gorgeous hats. Yes. What's the idea? Is that just the way you enjoy dressing, or is it more of a performance, or how is it?
I think I was actually kind of shy. Okay. And I really like going on stage. And the thing I hated most was when I'd go to a school and the kids would be like, who are you? And I'd go in the staff room and they'd be like, they'd think I was some parent who was kind of lost there. And they'd be like, you're using my mug. And like get mad at me. And they didn't really know who I was. And I realized that if I put on ridiculously over the top dressed up clothing, I was like an event. And, I'd come into the staff room and instead of being funny about it, they'd be like, oh, who's this? And they'd like make me coffee. And
so it's just so you can get a coffee. That's all it is.
Exactly. But also the kids would like pay so much more attention. Yeah. I remember I went to this school in Ireland and it was a sort of really dour school without artwork on the walls and everything was kind of grey. And I was wearing this stupid but really funny disco outfit. And just when I started walking across the playground, the whole playground went silent. Like the kids were so listening when I started that assembly.
Oh yeah.
They just wanted to find out who I was.
We were sort of laughing at him, but we watched a TED Talk. A TED Talk you did last night on YouTube, and Nikki was straight away, I want that dress. there was nothing. I want that dress.
My tailor.
No, but it does stand out, and it's like you say, it gives you a persona and someone who is really interested. It fits your style and your books. It's brilliant.
With the studio, there was about 5 doors down. There was this lady named Esther Marfa she had a little shop and she does like African sort of dresses and bags and things. Okay. We started working together because I'd come in with a picture and she'd just make me up a dress from my drawing. Oh, and she's a really good sewer. So we kind of, we're good friends now, and she makes face masks and stuff too. So I often will plug her stuff on Twitter because she's really talented.
So how did you get into sort of the working with children and doing stuff like that? Because obviously that's very different for, like you say, a shy artist.
Yeah. Well, the first time I did it was in Moscow. I was teaching art half a day a week, just volunteering actually for a school that didn't have an art program. And I was so outraged by that, I just said I would do it. So I went and taught. And it was good practice because it made me realize what kids find interesting, what they find difficult. And then when I started doing events, it was nice because you have a book to kind of pin things around.
Yeah.
So you can my first book was Morris the Mankiest Monster with David Fickling. And, it was so fun to teach kids how to draw a monster. Mm-hmm. And the main thing about doing events is making it really interactive and giving them little choices. Mm-hmm. So they don't want big choices because it's too much to deal with. But if you just say, should I give this monster big teeth or little teeth or big teeth? And they go, big teeth. And, should it be a little nose or a big nose? And they love those kind of really small questions, but it makes them feel like they're in control, which is a big thing for kids, being in control.
Yeah.
So I found, I sort of stubbed my nose. It was a few years ago at the Lakes when you thought, oh, we're going to go and see a children's, someone drawing for children. It was the Everington Brothers. And they were stunning. They changed my whole mindset.
It did actually.
About how people can show drawing off to children and teach children about comics or drawing or anything, because it was amazing. So I've got such utmost respect for what you do there.
Thank you.
It's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And watched a few videos of yourself, and it's just perfect. And I wish I was a kid. We never had that sort of stuff as a kid.
No, that's true.
I started doing a lot more videos in lockdown because it's just because I can't do events now. People can like go on my YouTube channel and find how to draw different things. And I think kids literally like the step-by-step approach. Yeah. Because like, they can do just be creative stuff on their own. But when you show them how to do something, it gives them confidence. And then they can kind of adapt it.
So that sort of leads on to actually a good question. Obviously, there's a lot of kids and parents with bored kids at home at the minute. What advice can you give to those parents to really drive those children to get into drawing and giving these things a go?
Have a lot of paper. Just have like paper sitting around so that they have stuff to work with, and art materials and pencils. You can have basic pencils, but also maybe splurge on some watercolor paper and some watercolors. And so they can try out things. I used to go to houses when I was a kid, and the parents didn't have any drawing supplies for them, so they just watched television. But at my house, my mom always made sure there was loads of drawing things that we could. So the kids would come over and we'd all make stuff, and it was so much more fun. Just have material available, and there's so many videos now online. There's no shortage.
No. Like you say, so is it for your own YouTube channel? Is it just search Sarah McIntyre? Is it?
Yeah, and it's also Jabberworks is the word. I don't know why I've used that word. It's just stuck. But if you go on my website, my main website, which is jabberworks.co.uk, you'll also find links to most of the videos. And then you can click on the YouTube thing.
I know where you go.
Yeah. But you guys have a couple of my videos on the Lycaf channel.
There is on there, yeah. So check those out. But to say your channel's got so much on there. It's jump straight on there. What advice would you give to anybody in particular who wants to create books for children? Especially those maybe they're doing adult comics and so forth who want to sort of move over that way?
It depends. If you just want to go for it, I say just make books, lots of little books, because the biggest thing is learning how to finish a project. There's a lot of people I know, they have an epic project in mind and they start it, but they never finish it. And the secret to finishing a project is to make it really small. So do a book that's only 2 pages long, or do a book that's 8 pages, 2 pieces of paper folded, and do the front cover, the back cover, the insides, the end papers, and just making a whole book from start to finish and then selling it like you do at a comics fair, a comics festival. That is such a good practice, not only of finishing, but learning how the whole book is made and sold, getting feedback. So yeah, I would say keep making books. I also do a Curtis Brown Creatives course if people want a little bit more hand-holding, because that kind of walks people through making a picture book. Okay. So they can subscribe to that too.
I was just thinking festivals, once upon a time when you could sell your comics to people.
Yeah, but you can still do it online. I have a big cartel shop, and I buy comics and stuff off people's online shops.
The funniest thing is as well, because if only this was on video, you'd see my face when you said about creating a big book. And I'm looking at Nikki thinking, you're only 10 pages into that book, aren't you?
15, I think you're fine.
There's so many people, when they do an illustration course, and their plan for their course is to create a 200-page graphic novel. And you think, no, because you're going to hate your beginning work when you get to the end. You're going to want to totally throw it away and start all over. And also you'll get really bored because, you're learning other stuff that you want to try out, and you have to stay in the same style because it's the same book. So I say, if you're doing an illustration or a comics degree or something, do lots of little projects so you give yourself space to finish and also experiment with new things, not just keep repeating the same kind of thing.
Yeah, no, that's good advice. That.
Yeah, definitely.
So what have you got planned then for 2021?
Ooh, I've got my next book, the next Roly Poly Flying Pony book with Philip Reeve, coming out in September. So that's going to be, should I tell you the title? I've never told anyone yet.
Exclusive.
Okay, I'm not sure I'm even supposed to do this, but I will tell you. It's called Kevin versus the Unicorns. So, there's going to be unicorns involved.
You just like drawing unicorns by the sound of it.
Yeah, I like unicorns. They're not the nicest unicorns, to be honest, but they might have some redeeming qualities. We'll find out. And that's a highly illustrated chapter book. And I'm not sure exactly. Things are up in the air a bit with the picture book front, because I was going to do this big art project in Nepal that completely fell through, obviously. And so I always wanted to open my own shop because I never had time to open one before.
Okay.
I've done that, and I've really enjoyed just doing one-off pictures. And it's so different than working with a publisher, because when you work with a publisher, you get an idea, you pitch the idea, you do the roughs, you make the book. It takes like another year till it comes out. And by the time the actual book comes out, you have to like remember what you were thinking when you were making it. And it's a long time ago. Whereas when I paint a pic, and also when they sell it, like it's like you just put it in this hole and they do some magic and then maybe you get a check at the end. But like if they don't do all that stuff, you don't know.
Yeah.
All that magic they do at their end with distribution and contacts. And you think, well, I hope they're doing it, but I have no idea. Whereas selling paintings, I know if I failed or succeeded because I can look at the shop and it says sold or not. And it's such a good feeling just to make something, put it in the shop, and like within 10 minutes have sold it. That's such a good feeling.
Yeah.
So you like
I like
you
my
do
shop,
the
yeah.
bits, don't you? But yeah, it's like linking. It's brilliant. But I must admit, I obviously help Nikki with the shop, and I do feel the same way. Whenever just the odd sale comes through, ping, yeah, you're happy.
Such an easy way to work.
So hopefully then come September you might be able to go and visit places and publicise your book, maybe.
Yeah, I hope so. It's because I had 2 books come out in this lockdown.
Yeah.
I had the second Grumpycorn book and then the third Kevin book, and oh my gosh, it's so, you just don't know what's happening to them. You think, is anyone getting it? Like is there any distribution at all? I know page 45 is my lifeline because I always stock it. And they always put like a review up and a link that I can send people to so they don't just go straight to Amazon, because that's what people do otherwise. And so Stephen is just like we have this agreement, if we're both single when we're 99, we're getting married.
Brilliant. And if you want to find out a bit more about Grumpycorn as well, he's done a partial reading, hasn't he, for the last festival
in a beautiful
YouTube
wood
as well. Yes,
gorgeous light.
If only it was sunny like that in October in Kendal.
Never is.
Never.
It's so beautiful in Kendal, though. I remember we were there last time. We did the 24-hour comic marathon, and we had to be trapped in a room for all day. And it was like, oh, but it's so pretty outdoors.
That was a year before we moved up here, when I brought you up here to see to see the festival before we started the podcast. So.
Yes.
It was so fun though, and we had so much help we had a whole team of art students who came and helped us, and like one of them did my crowd scene for me, and they even hired a masseuse for us. It was incredible. We had free snacks, and Scott McLeod came by and gave us encouragement, and it was great.
You just need a bottle of wine by the side of you. That's all you need. You're done. You're happy.
I never had a masseuse come in at a comic festival before.
So people want to see your work and obviously see your blog and so forth. Where would they go?
The best place to go is my website, jabberworks.co.uk, or just Google my name. And I'm on Twitter a lot, Instagram, also Jabberworks. And yeah, they can follow my blog and see everything back to about 2006 or something. And a lot of your books, I imagine, are in all the main bookshops. Yeah, and page 45. Places like page 45. Yeah, loads of all the kind of good go to an independent bookshop. Yeah, the independents are actually really supportive. There's like Tales on Moon Lane and all these kind of shops that are, they really, like the buyers are very trying to pick out things they like, and they've been very supportive. Well, it kind of, you need those independent books because the internet's not exciting. Waterstone's not exciting. You want those shops that are going to pull you in. Yes, like what Stephen does, reading to people and really pushing them to find the best books. It's, we miss He's out amazing. They walk into his shop and he can just give this whole book tour where he just leads them through. It's absolutely amazing. I heard him do it when I was doing a signing at the Comics Festival in Kendal, and he would do this book tour and just kind of, it was like you'd go on a tour of Rome or something, but he was doing it on books. And it's so interesting. I could barely pay any attention to the signing. I just wanted to listen to Stephen the whole time. We often pop in, seen him do that. You want to say hi to him, he's like, nope, can't. Step back. He's in the zone. Flow. He's in the zone. Oh, it's great. Brilliant. Thank you so much for your time, Sarah. Thank you. And fingers crossed, if all goes well, maybe up in Kendal in October. Who knows? I have no idea what the plans are, so we'll have to see. I hope it all goes through. It's such a great festival. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Expect hours of comic ramblings. They've only gone and got together again. Your hosts for the Mutterdowns are Mike, the Dungeon Master Williams, and Pete, how do, Taylor.
How do? Welcome to Mutter Down's 2021, the yakking endlessly about comics section of the podcast. I'm Pete Taylor, indie comics creator and chronicler of Silverbeard. Online I trade as This Man, This Pete. And as always, the mutterings will be supplied by...
Mike Williams, avid comic fan and COVID prisoner. I'm currently on Twitter at CthulhuPunk for all things comic and RPG related.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you as well.
Happy New Year to the mindless ones, I think we need to say.
Yes.
Anybody who's survived Christmas and entered an entirely new year. Never before has it been a newer year than this year. There's nothing the same at all. Everything's different, shiny and new. So let's just get straight down to business for once. We are doing the semi-finals of the Genre World Cup. It creaks to a close with the semi-finals of crime versus horror and superheroes versus fantasy. Now, we thought, didn't we, as we've discussed the genres to death, it really is in the hands of the ever-loving public to decide this one this time. But we thought we'd just do a little recap of what we talked about previously and go over any new gems we've discovered.
Yeah, the whole idea of this was just to come up with some great ideas of things to read, and the Genre World Cup was just constructed in order to find really cool stuff to talk about and make suggestions. Yeah. And again, get us reading out of our comfort zones. It's definitely stuff I haven't read. I haven't read a Western comic for a good long time, even though I did choose Firefly, but a proper Western comic. And we've had some cracking suggestions, really. And again, we've gone through the history of some of these genres as well. But like you say, I think we just need a bit of a recap. And let's see what each of us have read in the different categories as well that we can add to our must-read lists.
Well, it was just as well you remembered. We have talked about so many comics. And outside of the Genre World Cup, all we do is yak about comics with written. So I constantly worried that I'm just mentioning the same ones over and over again. But you very kindly, you managed to keep the list up to date. So I put forward for my 5 favourite crime titles: 100 Bullets, Spirit, Criminal, Parker, and Crowded, which is a pretty fine
it is a fine. And I have started trying to catch up on 100 Bullets again, because I read a little bit, but I knew the concept and remembered quite a bit. But there's a lot to reread, though. Mm-hmm. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to find Parker to read, though.
What do you mean find? What do you mean find it? Have you? Oh.
I wasn't sure. Is there good compendiums of it available still?
Yeah,
it's pretty old.
Well, funnily enough, I think it came out at the end of last year. There's a new compendium omnibus with a brand new Brie Baker Phillips Parker story.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think it's. Is it the Martini edition, or was that the first one? They've got sort of cocktail names. I think there's 2. But yeah, I think Sean Phillips has designed the volume as well. And yeah, they sound pretty damn good. So I don't know. It's weird. I've got them, and much like Hellboy, I've pretty much bought every iteration of Hellboy. I bought the floppies. I bought the first trades because they had a little epilogue at the end, and then I got suckered into the sort of library editions. And then I wanted to just be able to read it everywhere, so I got the digital versions, the chronological digital versions, so I could read all the short stories in chronological order. It's like, God. But yeah, when they keep adding little things like that, it's difficult not to, I have to say. And it's kind of different when it's not when the work is properly independent and supportive of the creator, so that you're not just pouring money into, a corporate.
Yes, I know what you mean. Yeah.
So, the fact that, Dark Horse and Image have a better, connection with their creators does mean that they're going to get a better, a better bit of your money than they would through a DC or Marvel. So
Yeah.
I don't mind that.
So, have you, in the brief interlude between us doing the quarterfinals, have you read any new crime stuff?
I have. I can't remember if I mentioned, but November by Matt Fraction is, and there's a lot of these popping up in terms of publishing terms. It's a sort of standalone graphic novel. I think it's a series of 4 connected stories, but they're presented in a nice hardback graphic novel format. There's been 3 out so far. I think the last one came out quite late last year, and I haven't read the 3rd one yet. But I was lucky enough to be able to get the first 2 and read those quite close together, and listen to. It's written by Matt Fraction and it's drawn by Elsa Charretier. Very atmospheric in both the writing and the art, because it's quite not dingy, but it's quite it's got a particular feel to it, and it all starts with a quote about November. And I listened to one interview where he was talking about November having a particular feel to it as opposed to sort of other months. It's a bit of an in-between month. It's just before Christmas. I mean, I think Thanksgiving's in America, and it's got. It seems to be about the connected characters around a crime. So you don't necessarily. It's quite a strange lead into the story. So you're not following the protagonists, and you're not finding out exactly what the crime is, but you're finding the story through the people connected to it. So there's a kind of courier come messenger type, and there's a police switchboard operator, and they're both in contact with the protagonist. So instead of you seeing these supported characters in the main character's storyline, it's the opposite. That the supporting characters are given the spotlight and the main characters are occasionally seen. So it's building up in quite a strange atmospheric way. I haven't explained that very well at all, but I am on my second G&T, so that's probably the reason. But it's gorgeously coloured. It is strangely lettered. I was having a chat with Mark about this the other day. It's not the easiest read. It's a bit of a strange font, but I really like the feel of it, and it genuinely seems to be doing something different. And I'm presenting a crime story in a different way. I'm really enjoying it, and gorgeous design by Ryan Hughes. The covers alone. The very first thing I saw of this before I knew anything about it was the cover. I think it might have been the cover to issue 2, and it's outstanding. So yeah, it's a fantastic package.
There's a lot more being released in nice little fancy hardbacks, isn't there?
I think
new and old stuff.
Yeah, I heard Ed Brubaker talking about, and my next book is Pulp, the Ed Brubaker, Sean Phillips standalone novel from, was that maybe August or something like that? Same format, and for him it was a reaction to the fact that if you're working in a format that can only be delivered in a particular way to one particular kind of store, i.e. a floppy to a comic book store, is that the best solution for longevity and for support in a weird time like we are now?
Yeah.
The fact that they've now, I think he said that they're only going to be working in this format, Sean Phillips and Ed Brubaker, they've just released, just before Christmas, another book called Reckless. I think it's set in the 80s. It's a bit more of a kind of less of a private detective, I think more of a slightly underworld connected Repo Man or some sort of fixer. I didn't manage to get it from the comic shop.
Right.
So I'm waiting for that to be delivered. But it's the same format. And I think that they've announced there's going to be at least 3 of those. But that format, as well as going to comic shops, can also go to bookshops. So
it's supplying everyone in a single format. I get that. Yeah.
And it's a great interview with him where he said that he does find that with comic book fans, they're kind of divided. So if they did produce a floppy, then there's a certain die-hard fan that would buy the floppy and you would get X number of buys in comic stores. It wouldn't tend to change, but there would be people who waited for the trade. So your kind of audience is split somewhat. Not everybody buys the same thing because some will just not wait and some will wait. Whereas if they released something only in one format, then everyone tends to buy it. The die-hard floppy won't wait, and the trade better.
I mean, I used to have this little internal logic that made me decide, am I going to buy this on floppy as it comes out, or am I going to wait for a trade paperback? Or am I going to wait for some really cool collector's edition? And that's gone to pot recently anyway.
Yeah.
So it depends, like, how excited I am for something, I'll get the floppy as it comes out.
Yeah.
And if it's as good as I think it is, I'll probably end up getting a decent copy. I mean, it's as sad as that. I mean,
totally. And funny enough, I think we'll end up discussing a sort of similar angle to this when we move on to superheroes versus fantasy as well. But yeah, both of my crime recent stories are both in the same format. I mean, pulp is part Western. So it starts off with, it's a story of a guy who writes pulp novels in the 1930s. He's long in the tooth. He's a bit of a kind of Clint Eastwood from Unforgiven character in that he's at the end of his days. He was previously around in Western times. So some of his Western tales that they depict in the book are based on his past adventures. But it takes a different turn and becomes a story more of a crime story set in the 30s. So it's brilliantly told. I was absolutely rapt. I don't want to spoil anything, but it's fab.
I did have my eye on that actually. Well, that was one of the things that kind of jumped out whilst I was looking through stuff to get at Christmas actually. Yeah,
I mean, and then I subscribe to Ed Brubaker's newsletter as well, which is always a great read. It isn't just a plug of his books either. There's a little Q&A at the end where people can send in questions, and he always has links to some really interesting or quite bizarre crime stories from websites. So that's fab. But there's a lot of insight into some of the background. I can't remember if there's a foreword in the book that tells you about the real, inspiration behind, or one of the inspirations behind the book. But he's channeled quite a lot of personal, I think, occurrences and personal elements into these works. Horror? Any new horror?
Well, I have actually myself caught up with a crime book. It's not a new one. and I'm going to squeeze it in anyway. But I think the same as yourself, we don't read 2000 AD anymore. And what I tend to do is wait for the really good killer stories to drop out into trade paperback, basically. And one that I had my eye on for a while, and it's a heavy cyberpunk, but it is 100% crime book, and that's Counterfeit Girl. And that's Pete Milligan and Rufus Dayglow. And, well, yeah, just another killer team for me, those two. Absolutely both of them. So I got the Rebellion collected graphic novel of it. I think it was about 2016. It was in 2000 AD. It's purely about, it's purely about crime to begin with anyway. It's kind of a future of heavy surveillance and absolute monitoring on a personal level and mega corporation control of everything. And the heroine is Libra Kelly, who's a street simmer, a new breed of criminal that kind of steals people's identities in order to either sell to other people or use themselves. But when they steal an identity, it's not just their net presence, it's almost biological level of stealing somebody's identity, because everything is controlled by genetic markers and access to your bank accounts and all that kind of stuff. So she literally steals somebody's identity, installing approximations of that person's consciousness even, and getting hold of their hacked gene ID. So massive cyberpunk aesthetic to it, obviously, but it's really about low-level street crime. She basically finds herself on the run. She does a bad ID job, and she finds that she's actually followed desperately by the head of the Albion Corporation, led by Sir Albion Starflight, who bears more than a passing resemblance to a certain recently impeached president. And that was the first thing that got me thinking, like, oh, this is kind of old style 2000 AD. I like that. But that's when it sort of turns into her being more of a sort of like an anti-corporation guerrilla. There's lots of digs about non-tax paying corporations, which, yes, and the use of political targets as villains. There's, again, you got to remember 2016. There's going to be a lot of people reading that who won't realise the huge resemblance of a hologram to Margaret Thatcher, and it just really brought back that whole heyday of 2000 AD, trying to sort of be a bit of a political sort of like just that whole political driving kick to it. And there's little Easter eggs as well in the background, like Debbie Harry posters. It's definitely written for a newer audience, but absolutely bringing back the old audience as well, which I kind of like that. It's great art from Rufus Dago. Obviously, he's a Tank Girl veteran, and the cyberpunk sort of anarchic story, it was just perfect for him. Just the colours, I mean, Dayglow is exactly what you're seeing on the pages. But it's a nice little crime story. I like that. So we are versus horror, aren't we? Sorry, that's me to start with horror.
Yep. So
we went through a bit of a history of horror, didn't we, last time? And I think the key recommendations was From Hell, At the Mountains of Madness, Fable, Gideon Falls, and the Twisted Dark horror anthology series. And I'm pretty sure when I mentioned that, I probably mentioned about 5 other ongoing horror anthology series. So if you like your Stephen Kingish style stuff, that was superb. So a very apt one that I did actually catch up on was one that you put me on towards back end of the summer, I think. You pointed me towards AWA Studios Year Zero.
Oh, yeah.
The first sort of chapter of which it's on their site still, I think, as a download. So I did finally get the collected volume 1. And it's zombie horror, but horror all the same. I really like the website, actually, of AWA Studios. It's worth going to. Because they really do present all their comics, and they give little teasers and all that kind of stuff. And there's so much to read off theirs. But Year Zero is a very fast-paced zombie story. It switches every couple of pages, at times even page by page, between different locations and characters all the way across the globe. I mean, the actual first volume, there's 5, is there? There's Sarah Lemons, who's basically trying to track the origins of the Dead Plague, and she's in a polar research station.
Yeah.
Switches suddenly to Mexico City, and you've got Daniel Martinez, who's like a young sort of street rat who's scratching a living in this new world of like poverty, crime, and zombies. Tokyo Saga Watanabe is a corporate assassin. Then you got Fatima Shah, who is in downtown Kabul, and I think it's hinted that she's a military advisor to the American forces. So she's kind of in a war zone of two wars. And then you've got BJ Hall, who you don't see that much of, who's a prepper, who's kind of digging in and prepared for everything but the loneliness. He's almost the comic relief, I think. But it's one horror. It's kind of 5 unique viewpoints and stories. Obviously, because it's swapping a lot, doesn't progress massively, but Volume 2's just about out now. Volume 2, Issue 1 is out now. So I'm considering whether or not to go straight in and get floppies or not, or just wait.
One of my favourite things about Year Zero, when you do read it, some of these books can be a little tricky to keep track in terms of when you're crossing from story to story. But I think it's Lee Luffridge was the colorist on it, and
yeah,
he defined a palette for each character and each location.
I was going to say, just do a quick flick through,
Yeah.
and you can tell where you are in the world. But
Yeah.
by flicking through the side of the book, it's really clever.
It's so nice, isn't it, that you've got a second way of realizing where you are than just the sort of the street visuals or the waiting for a character to pop up. It's really, really nice that you instantly know when you've moved from one location to another. It's fantastic.
It looks a lot of quality stuff, actually.
Yeah, there's still, and funny enough, you mentioned the trades are coming out as well, because I interviewed Lawrence Campbell, who has Old Haunts coming. Well, when I interviewed him, it was just coming out. It had a few delays along the way. That was written by Ollie Masters and Rob Williams. It's just that as well has just had its bind up released, and I had a tricky time getting all of them from my comic shop. So it was a little bit wasn't the best way to receive all of the issues. I ended up having to sort of get a digital in between, or I think I was waiting for issue 5, and that was when I got issue 2 from the comic shop or something strange like that. So wasn't the best way to. I wanted to read it all physically, but I've ended up getting it a little bit piecemeal. But considering this is crime versus horror, Old Haunts is the best or almost representation of both that I've read recently. It's three old school gangsters reunite to face up to kind of the ghosts of their past.
Right.
So it is genuinely, I mean, it looks fantastic. Lee Luffridge colours it. Lawrence Campbell just nails the hell out of the cinematic nature of not only that modern, glassy kind of Michael Mann gangster aesthetic, but really, really creepy, chilling horror visuals as well. And I think that's the bind-up of that's not been out long. So it's a bit of a cheat. I have mentioned Old Haunts to death, but it's absolutely genuinely one of the best comics from last year.
It's got to be good when you're covering two genres at once as well. One that's not out yet, but I just got notification that it's in my order. Marvel's taken on Alien comic franchise now, hasn't it?
That's started to come out, is it?
Yes, the number one's it might be a month or so away still, but I've got confirmation from my pull list. It's there. And this is because, of course, the mouse now has the franchise. One of I think we've got every franchise now, haven't we? I've read a little bit about it. It looks like a return to a more horror emphasis. I mean, Philip Kennedy Johnson, I think, is the writer, and he's fresh off doing Marvel Zombies Insurrection, was it? Was the last one. But the big plus for me is Salvador Larroca is doing the art, and I've got a massive soft spot for Larroca because he did all my favourite sort of X-Men years, I think. I think one of the things that they regret saying now is in the press release they used the dreaded phrase "a bold take on," which got a lot of negative comments from people because everyone says, "Oh, they're going to change everything. It's going to be rubbish." And they're all the people that just want them to say, "Hey, we're going to give you the same thing, just repackaged slightly differently." I'm going to wait and see. I hope it's a different take, and I hope it's one I like. But Dark Horse did a fantastic job, I think, over the years.
They did. I enjoyed a lot of their takes on it. Especially early on, I think it's quite. They had people like David Lloyd, and people that really understood the atmospherics.
Yes.
Of that genre. So I think it's like
they went off piste a few times badly, but that was early on. I can honestly say in the last 4 years, it just feels like absolute canon. Everything they've done, they've never stopped. They've never stepped too far out. But a lot of people are really hoping that the way the movies are coming now, that they're moving towards basically what was Earth War in the comics, where the aliens come to Earth. And it has been hints. Following on from Prometheus and Covenant.
Yes.
That they're going to step forward. So who knows?
Makes sense.
But yeah, it's at the moment the Alien RPG came out, the tabletop role-playing game, and everyone is desperately buying up Alien comics to mine for ideas and information. I'm sat there with an entire bookshelf of it all.
Yeah, totally. Oh, that sounds cool.
You anything else for horror? Was that the...
No, I think I'll leave it at that, just at the risk of repeating myself.
Well, that's crime versus horror, so that's the first semi-final. So that's what we're going to be asking people to vote between. Yes, crime and horror.
So one of those will be in the final for ultimate discussion, and one of those will be facing superhero or fantasy. Now, I remember when I did superhero, which was a particularly mammoth episode to cover all of that. I was trying to choose things from. I kind of went down a sort of decade route, I think, sort of 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, I think. So I ended up with Fantastic Four, Deadman, Warlock, ABC Comics, and Planetary. And I stand by those. They're still very much 5 total favourites of that genre for me. What have I read in that genre since? I ordered 2 superhero titles that I think perhaps I would have waited for trades. The 3 Jokers and Strange Adventures. Now I'm going to discuss them together because it's kind of similar really in terms of the 3 Jokers was a very early mention in Rebirth when we got the end of the New 52 and DC was returning to a new, more traditional approach to their superheroes, less gamified heroes. And at the end of that issue, one of the tales that was going to be discovered and followed after Rebirth was the idea that Batman hadn't just encountered one Joker in his career. He'd encountered 3. I think he'd gained the power of the Mobius chair, if I remember rightly, and he'd asked what was the true identity of the Joker, and the chair essentially said, which one? There's 3. so subtly. That's quite a mystery at the heart of DC. I mean, it's gone back a few years now, so this is before, the whole mystery of Dr. Manhattan and the Butt and goodness knows what. But the Three Jokers finally came out just a few months ago, and I have to say, I didn't believe that was the Three Jokers that had been promised at the end of Rebirth. It didn't seem to me that Rebirth really came about at all. There were lots of staff changes. There was lots of corporate changes. I think that the story we were given was a little half-assed, and the art was fantastic, but in terms of the story, I didn't really feel it delivered, and I thought the ending particularly didn't deliver. And it wasn't what I'd led to believe the story was going to be. I understand these things happen, and I understand why it wasn't the one that it was meant to be. But it was yet another kind of corporately dabbled with personnel changed sort of story. So, considering it was as pricey as it was, I was very disappointed. Strange Adventures is the Tom King, Mitch Gerads, Doc Shaner story of I didn't mention actually Three Jokers. That was Jeff Johns and Jason Klabok. Strange Adventures is written by Tom King, art by Mitch Gerads and Doc Shaner, who Doc Shaner is a particular favourite of mine. He's amazing. And that tells the story of Adam Strange in that typically 80s deconstructionalized way, so we're looking at two different sides of Adam Strange. Is he the golden age, cheesy, true to the heart space hero, or is he really a sort of devious, not to be trusted, sort of snivelling and sort of Trumpite? Two different artists doing both sides. I really enjoyed the Mr. Miracle series, but again, I have to say I'm having a bit of a problem with Strange Adventures. It's so decompressed. There are 12 issues of it. I think we're 6 or 7 or 8 in, and it really doesn't feel like the stories, it's a big story, but it feels really slow to me, and there's entire issues that would normally be perhaps a scene or two scenes. It's incredibly stretched out. Again, I have to say, it's incredibly expensive. It's about £4.50 an issue, and there's 12 issues. At the end of this, I'm going to be paying over 50 quid for 12 floppies. It's a lot of money. I mean, we were talking about the price of omnibuses or trades. I mean, if I'd have waited, I think I'd have got over some of the pacing issues if it was in a big book. I think sometimes the gap between stories does affect something like this, but I'm a little disappointed. I think it's not quite delivering for me. I absolutely love the art, but story-wise, it just needs a bit of a kick up its arse as far as I'm concerned. Really.
Yeah, I was aware of the Three Jokers mystery, only because you mentioned it, I think, possibly as part of the World Cup.
I've forgotten. Can't remember.
It just feels from what you've said like it was. I've seen this a few times where they've come up with an amazing mystery or a thread of something or a concept, and then realised at some point they're going to have to come up with something for it. And sometimes the concept is cooler than any idea they can actually implement for it.
Yeah.
I'm wondering whether it was. Sometimes you can just build up something in your own head. I do it a lot with little mentions in films, and I'm thinking, is that where they're taking the sequel? And I end up thinking of something better than what they actually come out with. So, I'm just wondering if it was one of those.
Yeah, I think you're probably right.
I mean, all through the World Cup, I was doing awful with superhero because I just feel like I've lost touch with the actual core bit. So I did say I was going to try and get myself back into Marvel and start a bit more DC. I've made a start. The one thing I really wanted to do, I learned about some of the reveals in the Ten of Swords series. Exodus Swords. Quite sure how you're supposed to pronounce it. In the 10 books. And I kind of wanted to get into that because I really was looking forward to basically the Captain Britain Corps coming back. And that was like a huge thing for me back in the day. So the more you look into something, you have to do a bit of research with Marvel when you're talking crossover events. And I realised I actually ended up, luckily, somebody completed the Wikipedia page for it. Otherwise, I think I would have been lost. And they also started. They've quickly followed up with trade paperbacks as well. So I've done prelude stuff for Dawn of X, which is House of X, Power of X. Read that. I'm now starting on the sort of the Ten of Swords stuff where they're all in different volumes. I believe there's 16 in total. So when you were talking about cost before, I realised to capture all of this is going to be a bit of a cost, but for the price of a trade paperback, I know that I'm getting 6 issues. One issue X-Men story, one issue of, I don't know, the Punisher, one. You know how these crossover things go.
That sounds fine.
None of it's going to be slow. It's all going to be fast. And that's why I used to love these crossover events. So I don't mind spending the money. I'm sure if I waited another year, you'd be able to buy, the compendiums, like the bricks sort of thing, which again are a little bit, but I'm happy to start collecting and going through. And I got to say, it's kind of reawakened a bit of a love. I mean, the whole concept of this is there's 10 swords. They've got to go out, grab the 10 swords, come back, and they've got to do some kind of universal tournament. And it almost feels like WWF at times. But I'm loving it, and it's just good, proper superhero fun. I am majorly struggling because I've forgotten whose kids are whose. It's like the last time I was there, it's like, okay, lots of them had kids. Yeah. Lots had all, but just a gap of a year or two, and you lose the connections. Yeah. But it's not written for somebody to jump in on, so it's challenging. It's one of those also that, like, you have been reading for the last 10 years, haven't you? Nods. Right, let's jump straight in. So it is challenging, but I need something from DC to get my teeth into, and I don't know where to start. So open questions for anyone that can answer that for me.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully the mindless ones will come up, because it is difficult because sometimes the fact that you're not going to the comic shop, you're reliant on what you see online. It's different from something that catches your eye in the shop, or something that somebody who knows you in the shop will recommend. And I've tried. I am totally still leaning more towards the indies than Marvel and DC, but I do still try and, pop in and support everyone. The thing that got me recently, which really fits into what you just said about X-Men history, that my last sort of recent superhero fix was the insane Comixology Marvel Masterworks sale.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
I mean, the amount of first editions of Marvel Masterworks you could get for 79p.
Yeah.
You could get the first 10 issues of Spider-Man, Hulk, Iron Man, Captain America, Avengers, Fantastic Four, X-Men for 79p.
Yeah.
Now we're going back to like 70s money. We're talking, like 8p an issue.
Yeah.
For all of this, goodness. So I really fell into that in terms of it. I was partly buying things as well because I knew that I'd often talked about getting certain series for the girls to read, and it's very easy when it's digital that you can just give them your login and they can read, all of the issues of 2 series in particular. I've always been keen for the girls to read because they particularly spoke to me, I think, at a certain age, and that was the new Teen Titans and the Uncanny X-Men. So I bought the Uncanny X-Men from Giant Size X-Men #1, I think 94 through to 200 and something. So it took you through, Len Wein's Giant Size issue, Chris Claremont through Dave Cockrum, John Byrne, Dave Cockrum, Paul Smith, John Romita Jr., with Art Adams annuals. Yeah, I think that pretty much was it. Oh, and some Barry Windsor Smith specials, Life Death. I think there's about 3 Life Death issues, and it includes Michael Golden sort of Avengers annuals, and the Frank Miller Wolverine Limited series was in there, and the John Buscema Magic Limited series was in there, and it was like it was amazing to revisit with such convenience, because I don't know where half my comics are. It's a real pain to find them. So I honestly bought a ton of, and a lot of them I probably already had, but just for the convenience of having them in one place and be able to tell the girls at any time, if you want to read the Uncanny X-Men, it's there, and they're both keen. I don't know when they find the time, even in the pandemic, time. They're busy playing games. But, Deathlock was there, Astonishing Tales, Miss Marvel, which I haven't read all of them. And there's always the odd issue that when I was reading it, you never got every issue. So even though I would go back through the back issue bins and I was trying to get all of particularly the Claremont Byrne Austin issues, I never got them all. So it's really strange to suddenly come across an issue that of a series that you're so familiar with that you didn't read.
Yeah, and it's quite a strange sensation. I've done that before now, where it feels like that doesn't match the rest of them. And I can't put my finger on it. It's not because you haven't read it 50 times.
Yeah,
that's why.
Yeah.
I had that with Sinkovich Elektra Assassin miniseries. I didn't have issue 3, and I must have read 1 to 8 without 3 so many times, and then I finally got it. And it's like, oh no, that doesn't match. The artwork's different. It's not at all. It's not at all. It's just I'm not intimately familiar with every brushstroke.
Yeah. So there were lots I hadn't read, and it was it was very cool. The Champions and catching up with things that I just bought because they were 79p. But yeah, it was fab. That was my deep dive this Christmas. I've done deep dives previously on Paper Girls and different things because they were on offer. But this year, it really was a catch up with some, mainly sort of 70s and 80s titles, Marvel titles that I some I remember and some I don't. It was great fun.
Do you have archive anxiety yet about all these different places in the cloud that you've got huge collections of films, books,
it's more
comics?
Films, because I unfortunately ended up transferring. Somebody went bust. I think it was Ultraviolet, and they said
there's 2 of them that went bust. It was Ultraviolet and I can't remember the name. There was 2 of them that went bust. one transferred, and they all transferred to another. And you're right, I actually lost a few movies.
Well, so did I,
well.
and it was annoying. It was Bill My Gallows Eye Out of the Past, which was one of my favourite all-time movies. But I also annoyingly was logged into the wrong Google account when I transferred, so I now have 2 Google Play libraries. I wanted to transfer and keep it all in one, so now I've got some films on one Google account, some films on another Google account. I've got some films on Amazon Prime, and the danger is that you're just going to buy the same movie twice on different platforms.
Yes, yeah,
it'd be annoying.
But I've got comic stores all over the place, though. Do you know, especially when you start thinking about things like Humble Bundle and...
Yeah, true.
There was a European comics one that I did recently. I got a load of the humanoid stuff on that. Yeah.
I know, Kickstarter. Yeah. Trying to keep track of it all. No, it is. It's... but what a position to be in, eh?
True.
So that was superhero. Was that fantasy?
Yeah. Only thing I was going to add was I'm rereading The Boys because I got given the box set of The Boys TV series for Christmas. So I'm holding off watching that until I've reread.
Fair enough.
So I'm looking forward to that as well. Right, fantasy. Right. Okay, this was mine to start again. So, as he says, shuffling papers quickly to get to what were the previous fantasy suggestions. Well, there was Mouse Guard was a personal one I shoved in there. There was the excellent Monstrous, Rat Queens, Slania or Slane, if you're ignorant, and of course Conan. Well, funnily enough, so
drink
with that. Okay. With that in mind, what's the latest fantasy I've read? Well, it's the Cimmerian, the Frost Giant's daughter. Issue 1, because that's all that's out so far, from Blaze Comics. The most, what they tout as the most faithful adaptation of Robert E. Howard's one of the original Conan stories. It got a fair amount of airtime, did Conan. So this seems a bit sort of, I don't know, apt that I've gone back to him. But the reason why it was an immediate addition to my pull list was that it was advertised as a mature, faithful adaptation of the original story. What I was a bit annoyed at later was I noticed that they suddenly started advertising it as the uncensored in block capitals. I've got no idea why they're doing that. That's just sensationalism. I really don't know, because it's the Frost Giant's daughter. I don't know why uncensored, but we'll find out. I'm familiar with the story over and over again. It is considered a fantasy classic. So yeah, it's kind of set in the north of Cimmeria, north to Cimmeria, so Nordheim that would be, wouldn't it? And it's all about Conan striding across a battlefield where he's the lone survivor. So it's all sort of like dead Aesir and Vanir warriors, and that's when he encounters the beautiful nymph-like Atali, who he misogynistically immediately starts to pursue because she's a beguiling beauty across the frozen wastes, and then that's where you find that she's actually the daughter of the frost giant Ymir, and she's luring him to his death. It's one of those weird ones, and from Robert E. Howard, and the reason why I think it's weird is it just feels like a real mythology story. Sounds so similar to so many other mythology stories, but of all his short givings, the one just every now and then he does a story where he shows that he can do proper prose. Do you know, really quite beautiful writing, even if the subject matter isn't particularly beautiful. And it's one of those that kind of stands out. I've got the collected works, and it is one of those that kind of, there's a few, but that one, yeah, it's a great one to start with. It's Robin Recht is the adapter and the artist. And I do like it when you have a writer-artist. I think there's no reason to ever. Obviously, occasionally you can see like a writer or an artist jars a bit, but you've got no danger of that when they're the same person. And it is really quite beautifully illustrated. I do like it. It's an iconic Conan story. I think, going back to a previous comment, the only issue I have with it is there's about 8 pages of crap at the end of it. That's some other comic, or I didn't really read it. It wasn't anything to do with Conan, and it felt like I got 2/3 of a comic book. But I'm now suspecting that this is going to be quite a nice collector's thing, so I might just actually stop it on my pull list and buy a nice version of the collected. Maybe not. Probably not, knowing me. But yeah, it was quite nice. It's a nice, interesting take on Conan.
Yeah, the Ablaze stuff is interesting because that is the European Conan stuff, because of the difference in the copyright laws, isn't it? This is the European Conan stuff, which I've bought twice. I bought the English translation and I bought the original French album of the Queen of the Black Coast. Yeah. Because I loved the art so much. I'd seen it online and I had to wait a while before I could find out where to get it from. Bought the album, and then when this appeared in the comic shop, bought it again for the translation. But yeah, I've not come across this particular one, but I'll have to look that up. Fantasy wise, for me, there's I don't know, it feels a bit cheaty, but I mean short of repeating myself over things like Headlopper, which I adore. I've got Kaiju Max, which just came to a close. I only read it yesterday. I think it's season 5, issue 6. Brings the latest saga to an end. It doesn't feel like it's the end of the series. I think we might have one more. It really does bring pretty much. I mean, it's a really genre-busting title. You've got the kaiju monsters. The conceit is that they are held in a monster-sized prison. The wardens have that sort of Japanese superhero ability to sort of grow to their size in super suits or robot armor, and it's truly is. I know I've probably mentioned it before. It really is this ability to bring humanity to monsters. It is crazy how you can crumble when something happens to them. You can feel so connected to them. You can feel so emotionally that they can come across as being so emotional. Xander Cannon, who is the writer-artist, who worked previously on Top 10 with Alan Moore, and he's done a lot of indie titles as a creator. It's brilliant. It is just one of my favorite books to read. I don't know. It feels a little bit like a push of calling it fantasy, but honestly, the amount of touchstones they have inside it, whether it is Pokemon was one of the recent takes they had in the last season. They were bringing in Pokemon as a genre. Cthulhu and Lovecraft has been touched on. Obviously, monsters and Japanese kaiju are at the heart of it. I don't know whether that counts as sci-fi or fantasy, but sci-fi didn't get through, so I'm bringing Kaiju Max into the mix.
No, you're you're actually not the only person that's given that as a personal recommendation to me. Actually,
it's incredible. It is genuinely moving. I mean, and I heard people talking about it, and that's why I read it. But when you actually read it and find out it's true, it's incredible how it really is incredible how emotional he's managed to make it. It's totally outstanding. It's amazing.
We had a bit of a Godzilla night actually.
Oh, nice.
The film was, and the reason it came about was that just before I was obviously hoping to catch up with family and everything. So I ordered a box of Japanese Dagashi box of all the Japanese candy for kids from Japan. So the idea was it was like for all of us to sort of like because I don't know if you've seen them, but they're really weird. The stuff that's in candies. It's like there's powdered beer and things like that, and just like weird Play-Doh things to make your own burgers out of. And yeah, so I wanted like all of us just to we were going to watch Akira, so we just thought, all right, just have Japanese all night. So we had a bottle of Japanese wine, some Japanese food we could scrape together from supermarkets and make ourselves, and then we had this Dagashi box just to sit down and watch Godzilla and Akira. Yeah,
that was amazing.
It's boredom leads you to these things, which are actually quite fun. Funnily enough, another entry I had for fantasy was Rising Sun, which I'm sure probably most people wouldn't have come across this. It's from IDW, but it's a kind of mythological fantasy set in 12th century Japan. Yeah. But the weird thing is, it's based on a world that was created for a board game, which I happened to own. It was a Kickstarter a while ago from a famous game company called Simon. Now, it's it's only 3 issues, and they kind of went for a concept that's not new. I think I mentioned it when I was talking about my history of D&D segments, that you have comics that are based on role-playing games, so anyone can pick them up and enjoy them, but in the last couple of pages they give you some rules for the game to make it feel like it's sort of like a new concept or something, like a comic RPG crossover. Yeah. Well, they kind of did that, which was quite nice. The story was good. It introduced you to the world in general, which is odd because the board game doesn't. The board game is very much like it's a mix between Risk and Catan. It's all resources and building up and moving around a huge board like Risk, and you're building up your empires and stuff. But Simon are very good at creating a whole world in order to sort of like embed you into a fantasy game of some sort. So it's just quite interesting. It's definitely worth seeking out for a read. It's not, earth-shatteringly new concepts or anything like that. It's just, it was interesting to me because I had the board game. But what was interesting was it's kind of like it was a tester for a bit of a partnership between Simon and IDW. And they did a Kickstarter back in last year, which was for another couple of comics that were based on their more famous games. There's one called Cthulhu Must Die, which is newish, but their biggest seller by far is a game called Zombicide, which is just amazing, of which I did the Kickstarter for the second edition. So what they actually did was, alongside the comics, they had miniatures as well to use in-game with rules. I know this isn't going to be a mass appeal thing, but it's quite cool for the geeks of us who kind of love comics and love our tabletop games and it's just a really good mashup. They've done it for years, haven't they? Comics and video games, but this could be quite a good partnership going forward. So I look forward to a few more of those. Is that it for fantasy then?
Yes.
Okay.
So
that's
Crime
fantasy
vs. Horror and
superhero.
superhero versus fantasy. So we're leaving it up to the mindless ones.
We are. We're going to try and put some kind of vote thing on the Comic Art Festival blog, and hopefully try and remember and be a bit more conscientious and do like a tweet of some sort as well. But either way, just leave votes or suggestions for other things to read in any place you want, digitally, platform-wise. We don't care.
Totally. Let us know what you've been reading in lockdown that doesn't have to fit the genres either to a certain extent.
No, we're always looking for stuff to read. If it's not a recommendation, try it.
Yeah, totally. So, please help us get to the final of the Genre World Cup, which is which is going to be superhero or fantasy versus crime or horror. I mean, it's nice to see the powerhouses in the final. It's properly, seems properly appropriate. So let's find out what the real showdown's going to be, and we will meet up next time, hopefully with somebody else, for a final story analysis and find out who is the ultimate victor of the Genre World Cup.
It's interesting. We've been left with these 4 genres. They're the only 4 genres, I think, where neither of us tried to shoehorn in Love and Rockets as a suggestion. So I'm going to have to give out a prize if whoever we get joining us for the finale of all of this manages somehow to shoehorn that in. But it's been fun so far, and I look forward to finding out what the finalists will be.
Yeah, so do I. Brilliant. Well, thanks for listening, everyone, and catch you next time. Cheers.
Till next time.
Right, let's talk some Comic Art Fest news.
Bring it
it on, as she says. Mm-hmm. Do you want to go through that bit?
Yep.
There? Do it.
So the Lakes International Comic Art Festival is delighted to announce its involvement in the Comic Art Europe project, working with Lyon BD Festival in France, the Escola Joso in Spain, and the Belgium Comic Centre. Comic Art Europe is an international pilot project bringing together 4 European organisations promoting and championing the power of comics and graphic novels. Do you want me to carry on? Shall I do all of it? It's quite long, people.
Comic Art Europe will include professional training, creative assistance, dissemination of results in Europe and outside Europe, and research about the power of comics.
And it will include professional training, summer cancer residencies as well.
So you can apply to get involved. If you look on the website, we'll put a link on it.
Yep. Go
and have a look. So if you're a creator and you're interested in getting involved in that, getting yourself trips over to one of some of these other festivals and so forth. And then do it. Do it.
Do it now.
Get on it. That's my Annie.
That is awful. But carry on.
Okay, so in this COVID world, we are hoping that come, June, July, things might start going back to normal, maybe?
I am very hopeful. I'm very hopeful. No, it will. Come on, we've got to collective hope.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, with that in mind, the Lakes International Comic Art Festival is planning to run from the 15th to the 17th of October 2021.
Book it up. Hopefully that big Travelodge will be open as well.
Yes, that's true. Travelodge is opening for all you get. I'm sure that'll be the cheapest place in Kendal. The Comics Clock Tower, as always, will be open Saturday and Sunday, and they are now open to apply if you want a table there.
Yes. This year, the festival is offering full tables at £100 and half tables at £50, though they cannot offer shared tables this year. And if the event does go ahead, we'll take every measure to ensure the staff, volunteers, exhibitors, and the public place are safe. Oh, the public, you'll all be safe, all right? We're going to cover you in Dettol. It'll be fine.
As of this year, they're going to keep going with the virtual Comics Clock Tower.
It's a great idea.
Which, as far as I know, will be there whether the event goes ahead or not. Mm-hmm. So straight bonus there. But you will be featured free if you apply and you're accepted. if the festival didn't go ahead for some reason.
Yes, so if COVID is still here, then the virtual comics clock tower will be free.
And no one got charged
to
be involved with that. Mm-hmm. They're just people who were going to be going anyway. So, but yeah, I think that's slight reduction in cost for the weekend. I might be wrong as well. Mm-hmm. Not a bad price at all. £100 for a full table for the weekend. Mm-hmm. So if you're interested, again, we'll put a link on there. Get signed up.
Yeah, and we'd love to see you. We're going to get cocktails. It's going to be fun.
It is a warning. It is a tough process because a lot of people do apply. There is only a limited number of tables at the end of the day. So, yeah, when you're doing your application, really think about it. Put in your best stuff, your best work that you can show off. Yeah. Because they're after really original stuff. They like new and different. And so, yeah, get involved. Get involved.
And then you might be interviewed by us.
You might be if you're unlucky.
Dragged to one side.
You've got until Friday the 26th of March to get involved as well. Mm-hmm. But you've also got to think there's so fewer events going to be happening. There's only going to be, at the most, half a year's worth of events, if that.
Yeah, because nothing this side of Easter is going to be
probably
happening.
Probably even only a third of the year. You know.
Yeah, we can only be thinking
August onwards, really, and that's if we're lucky. So.
You just drink your tea there.
I am doing. Well, I thought you were talking.
No, I stopped just to listen to you drink tea.
So, get involved. Get involved. Right. So, interviews coming up. I'm just going to... Can you just talk now? 1 second.
No, I'm going to watch you poke at your phone.
I've got it. I'm not organised. Right.
He's pressed the button.
As said before, we'll have Stephen from Page 45 coming on. Mm-hmm. Hopefully Hannah Berry before that to discuss her role.
It's the leaving and the coming in.
Yeah. Next couple of episodes, though, we have got Jason Burrows and Bobby Jones. As long as we get those sorted out in time, they're coming on for a chat.
Lovely.
So something very different there.
Yeah, can't wait.
Yeah. But we hope you enjoyed this episode. We apologise for the past 7-8 months of a bit uppy and downy and
going through a pandemic. It hits everyone in different ways. So I think
that's
we've
how I
all
call
been
it.
We've all been ups and downs, and we had to move house as well, and we had quite a lot of stress happening in our lives. But we're here now.
But here's to 2021. Woo! Jesus.
Oh God, it's a garbage fire already, isn't it? 2021.
Thank you for listening. Bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening to my dulcet tones and their northern ramblings. Find out more about the Lakes International Comic Art Festival at comicartfestival.com and find us on Twitter at comicartfestpod or online at comicartpodcast.uk.